Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Pixel Classroom podcast. I am, of course, your host, Ryan Reed, and you can find me on my social medias at Herc78 on Instagram and Threads, Blue Sky at Ryan7Reed, as well as on Mastodon. And of course, you can find me on LinkedIn here. If you're noticing here on the live stream versus our audio here, I'm using now the new card pieces here. And believe it or not, my guest is actually hiding behind one of the cards. You can't see her. She's already in here. So I just started in. She's the very first one to do this. This is the first one for the live stream. We're doing our different modules and everything. Try to get a little bit better, as she says, a gamer kind of look here too. So we're going to be doing this because on the audio, you'll just have your normal little piece with it. And on that note, I think I should just stop talking and get into it because I respect their time. They are very busy this week and coming up here, and they've recently released a new book, which we'll be talking about probably a good portion of it too. So my guest today is a renowned motivational speaker, and they are the author of Teach Happy, Small Steps for Big Joys, set off by schools, businesses, and organizations worldwide. She has the powerful message about impacting happiness on well-being and pursuit of fulfillment, and of course traverses the girl and her insights. And trust me, this book has been a little bit of definitely something I have definitely been wanting to do, and it kind of hit the spot here, which we'll probably talk about in the podcast. And I would like to welcome the Pixel Classroom podcast, the one and only Kim Strobel there to it. And if we can get to our little piece on the live stream, there we both are. Yay!
Oh.
Here we go. We'll get this. So there you go. There we go. There, now it looks a little bit better what I wanted it to look like. There we go. Got her. People on the live stream will see versus the audios. I actually have all their contact information underneath us in the little piece. It'll be in the show notes. But like I said, this is how we learn. We got to do a little craziness before we get it like 100% caught up on here. So Kim, well, first of all, welcome for coming here to the podcast today. Also, as well as doing the little craziness I've got going on in the background. You're being the first person on these different She's laughing all about this too. So Kim, why don't you introduce yourself to the listeners here and people on the live stream here who will hopefully be watching. We got a whopping 2 people so far. We're on our way. So
yeah, well, thank you, Ryan. And I have to admit, I think I've met my match. I didn't know that most people could keep up with my speed talking, but I've met my match, and you and I must be wired a little bit the same way. I'm like, oh my gosh, somebody who talks as fast as I do.
It's funny. Kim Biernan and I had this exact conversation last year. She's like, oh my goodness, you talk as fast as I do. Yes. People say, oh, it's your mom's fault. Like, actually, it's my grandma's fault. Grandma was the fast talker. And so that's how we are. We're fast talkers, and the kids sometimes say, do you take a breath? Like, do you? And they're like, no. I'm like, okay.
Well, I do everything fast, Ryan. I mean, I listen to every online course. I was listening to an online course today at 1.75 speed. I listen to my books on audio on fast speed, and my husband thinks it's absolutely insane. Of course, he's Mr. like laid back, and so he's like,
right.
Why do you have to operate like this in every area of your life? I can't even understand what that person is saying. I'm like, I'm keeping up with it.
That's my wife right there.
Yeah. So, I'm a former 4th grade teacher, and then I was a curriculum director. And then I launched Strobel Education in 2016, which felt super, super scary. But as you probably read in my book, I'm a pretty intimate with the feeling of fear in my life. And so I think that sometimes that causes me or allows me to be able to take risk in my life. But I did this super risky thing, and I stepped out of the curriculum director's role, launched Strobel Education in 2016. And you know what? Here we are 8 years later, and it has evolved and changed. And now I do a lot of motivational speaking keynotes. We have a lot of online courses, and my consultants and I go out into the field, and we do a lot as well. So we just have several branches that of what we do. And, Ryan, I'm just really lucky. It was scary to walk away from that very strong, stable, every 2-week paycheck job. But for me personally, I think that I was able to kind of step out of my zone of excellence, which was teaching and leading, and maybe step into my zone of genius, which is that very thing that you would wake up and do no matter what. And so I feel very, 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 very grateful for that. But, my own trauma kind of led me to this path, as you know, and you and I were talking a little bit about that. I'm sure we'll get into it, but.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good point. I mean, you were fourth grade and you went into this, and I know we'll talk about it here as we get more into the book and so forth. And by the way, it looks like our screens are like, look at that. I have that. Your little people who are in the live stream can actually see me have our little view screen on as we're like hide over in the corner. And look, there she is again.
You're such a cool dude. I can't believe you can figure all this out. This is awesome.
I believe it or not, and this is actually a good PD. I'm actually going to do this as one of my summer sessions here, as I like to do it because otherwise I have nothing to do over the summer, and I pay for all this, so it's like, hey, I got to have this going. Something I did actually, I learned out from a streamer. I just talked to him recently. He might be a guest next year, but he does a lot of this. He's a coordinator, he's a tech guest, he's a pastor, and he actually worked all this stuff with Canva using StreamYard or EVOX, which is another hosting site. And basically, I just watched it for like 16 minutes, and I was like, this is what I've been needing to do. And as I can see, it's just right here, like people who are on the live stream, I've got us in the corner with the patch it parts, and then I just stream this, and it looks like a gamer Twitch yard, even though I'm not on Twitch, and all of it shows up right there for her website right there. And if you think that's cool, I can also just go ahead and just do this really quick. See, it switched right back over, and if I want to, I can just go right into that and so forth. If I want to, I can just stop sharing it, and it's just us.
Awesome. I love it.
So anyhow, so that's a weird thing. So getting into the thing, you were a fourth grade teacher, and one thing that you talked about, especially your anxiety, and I mean, I talked about too. People have heard me on this many times, me dealing with depression. But what was one of the things about going into a fourth grade classroom, and then of course moving your way out of that into, like you said, you were a curriculum director. I mean, I was a technology facilitator that went to as a STEAM enrichment and director. And then I went into the classroom as business tech for the last 7 years and everything. And now it's slowly moving away from that to, I'm in a college scene or whatever, though my circumstances are, you chose, my circumstances are more of a kind of a force on me too. But how did you work with that, that journey from, person who had to deal with a lot of problems, that a lot of people don't expect to deal with at a young age to college to fourth grade to moving into this role where you currently stand now, Kim?
Yeah, I think that sometimes in certain areas of my life, Ryan, I have a lot of resilience simply because of the issues I've had to deal with in this life, my challenges and adversities. And then other times I feel like I have zero resiliency. I told my son the other day, I was like, sometimes it's like I feel like I have such a strong stress response. So, I can wax and wane depending on the situation, but I think like one of the things I've had to accept about myself, and again, very different than my husband. My husband was in the same job for 29 years, liked staying on his lily pad, didn't want to move out of that, ended up getting forced to because the company shut down, but he was there 29 years and he would still be there. And then I was kind of like this person that jumped around, right? Like classroom teacher, then literacy coordinator, then curriculum director. Then I used to feel bad about myself. Like, why can't I just be content? But it's not my personality. I just have something in me. I don't know if it's what it is, but I'm always kind of very interested now in like, okay, what else can we do? And how else can I serve? And what does this look like? That being said, I remember making the decision to leave the classroom. And that was a really tough decision because I really loved teaching and I really loved walking my elementary students through the school year, 180 days a year. I mean, there is something magical and special about that. And then all of a sudden when you leave, I remember somebody saying, you'll probably never again have your own classroom. You'll probably never come back. And that was a hard feeling. And, the way that I've had to adjust to that is knowing that I am affecting the students by now empowering the teachers. But I just think innately it's like a personality trait or something that's inside of me. Whereas I'm just never going to be the person that can just stay in one spot. And for those that can, there's nothing wrong with you. And for those that can't, there's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. Sometimes the people do it. It's like even people who later go on to administration and everything, they're like, hey, once you're out of there, that's it. You can't come back. And I've seen the opposite happen, and I've seen the area. But it is very one about doing that. Like, I think you perfectly, even everything was, even when I was younger, before I was in education, I wanted to keep moving up. I didn't want to be stuck doing the same thing for a number of years. I was more willing to do the leadership, more looking the behind the scenes, PD. Even today, as an example, I saw something like, yeah, that's what I wanted to do. That's kind of when I developed. I'm not doing it sadly because of circumstances right now, but it's like, yeah, that's it. I've always wanted stability. And I mean, in my previous district, I was 10 years in, I was there for 5 years. Everything's good. Unfortunately, a wall was just hit where it's like, I'm doing this. I'm ready for the instruction. I'm ready for this higher level. And it was kind of like, no, there's the door. You can peek in through the window and maybe occasionally we'll open it for you, but hey, you should just be good with this. And it was like, no, this isn't what I want. It's nice to be stable, but I'm not going anywhere, or it's not to a point where it's like, I'm fine if I stay in this for the next 25 years. I'm good to go, whatever. But that
Yeah.
just was not me, and still is
Yeah,
not.
and that's what we have to honor is I used to think I was supposed to fit in this box, like now I've even come to the realization, Ryan, that I'm very much an entrepreneurial spirit. I don't do well when I have to work for others.
Exactly. Well, that's one thing. Is like me, like I said, I don't go to please the bosses, but I definitely go to work with them in partnership. So that's always been me. I'm more of the partnership. As they say, I'm horizontal management. I'm not vertical. It's like I'll
Right.
talk to the top people, but I'm more willing to work with the superintendent, work with the custodial staff, work with the community serve, work with the ag teacher, work with the English teacher. Everybody's like, you're crazy. Why don't you just stay on your own island? That's I'm like, no, that's not how I work. That's not how I've never worked.
Right, right.
Oh man! And speaking of which, here, and if I can pull this up, like I said, I'm getting to it, but I'm not using my little mouse here the way I'd like to. Let's get over to it. There it goes. That's and then get us in the spot, and then let's talk about the big thing here because I hate this. I kind of feel like I'm not special. I think you've talked about it here, but you had a book come out right there, and there it is. Teach Happy, finding the big joy and everything else. And I think I've been listening to you like on 3 other podcasts, including, Josh Stanford here, who's also part of Teach Better and everything else too. But how did this book come together? Because the one thing is the first couple of chapters is more of like what was on long before you were into education. And then we kind of got to where you were, in education off to the entrepreneur. So how did this really come to better? I mean, another thing is like people know I read all these books. Like, how do you read that? If I was like, I just do. I mean, this for me, this is 128 pages. That's 3 days of reading for me. It's like I'm done. It's I just do it. And as you can see, I've got it tabbed, which Kim and I were joking. She's tabbed her own book in the visual wall. She's showing it right. I love you, Kim.
Well, I'm such a nerd that when I saw your book and you had all these sticky notes, I was like, I love that. So today I was like, I'm going to reread my book. I'm going to spend some time doing it. And then my husband came in and he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, he's like, are you making sticky notes for your own book? Cause I mean, I highlight, I sticky note, I write, I do summaries. Like that's just who I am. And you know what? Yeah, I still have to practice what I've written in here. I'm not the guru of happiness. I am a practitioner of happiness. And so, yeah, so getting back to this book, here's the deal. Ryan, I feel like I've always been torn between kind of like two worlds. One is I'm a self-help junkie. Ever since I suffered from my own debilitating panic disorder and found the self-help world, which really helped me start to work on the inside of who I am so that I could, really start to get those results in my life. I just became on fire with it. And so when I originally started to write this book, I was like, this is just going to be like a self-help book, right? Not just for educators, but like a self-help book where I want to tell my story of struggle and trauma. And then I want to plant the seeds of hope and actually show people the happiness habits that have made really big results in my own life. But then I was like, but my heart is on this teaching profession, as somebody who gives keynotes all across the country. After a keynote, these teachers and school leaders, they just flood to me and they say, Kim, I want to be in this profession. I believe in what I do, but I am so lost and I am so overwhelmed that I don't even know one thing I can take off my plate. And I just kept getting that message. And so I was like, you know what? I want to write this book with teachers in mind. And I think before we get into happiness habits and happiness, you need to understand my own story of darkness and struggle and trauma. And I actually don't think that we talk a lot about that. And, we walk through the hallways, we put a smile on our face, we show up as the best version of ourselves for our students. But honestly, many of us are going home, driving our cars home and really struggling with the fact that the teaching profession also steals many other important parts of our lives away from us. And
Hmm.
so I had this idea for 10 years. I would start on it for a little bit and then abandon it for 2 or 3 years because honestly, I didn't believe in myself to be a writer. I thought I'm not a good enough writer to write a book, but yet I knew that I wanted to put this down and create this blueprint so that it would really help others be able to make those shifts in their own lives.
Well, and I think that's a really good point because I mean, like me too, which was very hard for me to talk about, and some people are still to this day surprised how I've talked about my depression, because I had to deal with it very large, and I really didn't have a full diagnosis of it until I was in college, professionally. I mean, it was pretty much obvious what had happened to me through I had to deal with a lot of issues in high school, including attempted suicide, everything, and a lot of depressions, which was a lot of people that just didn't understand it or could believe that I was ever in that kind of a situation at that time. And as time has gone on, how I've had to deal with it. I had to deal with it in my 20s. I had to deal with my 30s about, believe it or not, before COVID, I started getting hit by some hard standards of again. And then I was on counseling and medication for the last couple of years. I was at my old district, which I went off luckily just before I left and went to my current. And it's been hard to talk about, but I've also been very open about it for a number of years. I think the one thing is, and I mean, I think you bring this up in the book a couple of times is, some people don't want to talk about it. I mean, like you or me, like you want to talk about your anxiety. What you did. I want to talk about depression, what it did. Some people just like, no, I don't want to hear it. And like, why don't you want to hear it? It's like, because apparently you're better than me. You're stronger than I am. I'm like, you can talk about it. It's not, I'm not judging you. We all have our differences, but people are very hard. It's very hard for people to be vulnerable or deal with those situations.
Yeah, and I think probably people like you and I are more extroverted in nature, and so that comes easily to us. And what I would say is like you have to talk about it to somebody. Maybe it's just a trusted counselor. I mean, I've had a counselor in my life on and off for 20 years, and I call him it's a word I made up, but the great potentializer.
Yeah, I
Because
saw.
he's been
That's a great word.
that's it, right, because he's been able, like, to just pull these hidden gems out of me that I didn't even know were there because of the deep work that we've done. And I don't even always like wait for something bad to go wrong before I see him. And I've really schooled our son in that as well. I've always talked freely about going to a counselor. I honestly think that every single human being needs a counselor or life coach or mentor or someone in their life in order to experience the best of life, because we can't figure things out on our own. We get in our own way. I'm just finishing the book Break the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And it's like, yeah, it's like we have these neurological connections that have been embedded and, fired and wired together for years, and we can't figure it out on our own. And so I would say that for those, if you're wanting to get more out of life and you're feeling stuck and you've never dealt with whatever that trauma might be, then at least find a trusted counselor or a very close friend that you can confide in, because when you keep it in, it just festers and it turns into really bad stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, right here, I have. I'm not throwing anything in a book. Like what I have tab, like page 37, about listening to those sounds, acknowledging those feelings, and of course, like you said, offering help. I mean, one thing I was able to say in my previous district is I had a counselor who had my ear, and it was very good to go to. Her name was Kathy Simonini, and she's still there, but it just felt so good that I could talk to her. I mean, granted, she had to deal with students and other issues, but it was always good I could talk to her about issues, and her and I could sit and talk for 20-30 minutes during break times or plan times where her and I could do it. And sometimes we would talk after school and go for a while too. And I think it worked really well. And before that, my cousin runs a counseling session in a nearby town. I went to one of theirs, which was really good too. So it was good to talk about it. And in cases like here, talking to you here on the podcast, talking about people on my Teach Better network, some people I talk in my Discord with my Spider-Man group here. It's sometimes we want to be vulnerable. It just feels good to talk to this. And believe it or not, one of them is actually a licensed counselor. So in a way, we kind of like, hey, we're getting free therapy and talking about Spider-Man. So
Yeah. And my brother was talking recently because he's a member of a men's group, and he says that men really suffer from kind of their own silence, because as women, we do kind of talk to our girlfriends, we chat, we tell them our problems, we're frustrated with our spouse, we're this, we're that. And men really do not talk to one another in that way. And so he's a member of a men's group that meets every Friday at 6:45. And he just said it is amazing what it has done for all of them to learn how to have these vulnerable conversations as men so that they can show up as a better husband, a better father, a better human being for themselves. And so it's going to be some work, but like, how do we normalize that? I know at one of our neighboring school districts, Perry Central Community Schools, they have a very big well-being focus, and they got a really great grant. And with that grant, they have a counselor, like an outside counselor who's available to their teachers for free, because we're talking about the effects this profession is having on educators, but are we really truly giving them the constant needed support that they need in order to feel better in their profession, in their life? And so I really applaud them because they actually put action behind their words.
And I think that brings up a really huge piece here in your book when you talk about toxic positivity, which I have been dealing with many, many years. I just wasn't a word for it. And now in the last 2 years, I'd say I found out that was a word. And I'm like, you're right. That's absolutely exactly. It's not the example of, oh, it's a backhanded comment. Like, oh, your shirt looks nice, but your shirt's wrinkled. It's like, oh, thank you. You're telling I have an eye thing, but I didn't look in the mirror. And I'm like, no, that's a backhanded comment, basically saying like, hey, you look like a slob, you got a nice shirt on, versus toxic positivity. And you highlighted some ones I've been seeing several school districts, several things on social media. I've seen on posters on the wall too. But I think that's a really thing people don't see. They always say, take care of yourself, but you need to be here until 6 o'clock because we need to go over this testing thing pieces. I'm like, well, how am I taking time for myself if I'm working until the very end of my contract hours? Or my favorite here too, it's like, well, just remember, you've got to take time for yourself, but hey, you have four sick days. It's like, well, then how can I take off and not worry the world's going to explode,
Yeah. Yeah. And to me, some school districts are actually putting in some, what they're calling mental health days. I'll be totally honest, Ryan. I used my sick days as mental health days. I would feign the flu or whatever because I just needed a break at home. I just needed a day at home. But like, how can we normalize that? The bottom line, and then of course, then we feel the effects if we are gone for a day. It's like, oh, it's just too much. And so I think that not talking about the hard stuff is really getting in our way of getting to the good stuff. And you're right. We see these on posters like, be the best you can be for kids and give it your all and da 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 da. And I'm like, I want teachers to show up for those kids. My goodness, I know that my ability to show up for my students had some major positive effects. But if you're not, and I hate to, but if you're not truly putting your own happiness and emotional well-being at the forefront, you simply will not have what it takes. And we think it's frivolous to put the focus back on ourselves. And so my big message is, you know what, teacher, you come first. You come before those kids. And I really mean that. And not only that, but in the book, I'm going to show you the exact steps, the exact blueprint to start to make these shifts in your life. And let me tell you what, it's not easy and it's messy and it's going to make you uncomfortable because you're going to have to draw boundaries and you're going to have to stop your people-pleasing tendencies and all of these things that are a struggle for all of us. We have to rethink how we're operating in this education system, but that part is in our power.
Yeah, and I think you had a great example when you were talking about a coworker, and he said even to that day you still did not do it. I was the thing, but I had one here, which luckily we have a good relationship. But they were doing something that I wanted to do, something I was planning to do, something I had, as they say, working in the classroom. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, but this person, luckily in their field and where they are in the position of school, they are the right person to do this, and most likely people will listen to them. So that was my issue. But yeah, part of me kind of went, yeah, this was my stuff. And 6 months ago, I was supposed to be heading it off. And now, that's out the door. But at least I can say, yeah, this. And then also when we were going through that, to hear people were more positive about accepting them, like, there we go. That is a good thing to do it. But like I said, that's an example of, I have a good relationship with that. I worked with somebody for 5 years. Her and I, and people have brought this up many times, her and I did not see eye to eye for close to 4 years before we finally got on the plateau of it too. And it took a lot of changes both on her end and my end to get there. And then by the time I did leave the district, she's like, oh, I don't want you to go now.
Wow. That's amazing that you all didn't abandon ship on each other, because a lot of times we abandon ship. We're not willing to work our way to that middle ground.
Yeah, and I think that was a good thing too, because some people like even my principal is like, oh, okay. I don't know how this is gonna work between Ryan and them, because they don't hate each other, but they've kind of not been on the same playing field since day one they came in. And like I said, she'd only been there an extra year before me, so it's like year longer versus me, but English teacher versus business and tech and media teacher. And the truth is, the situation was just over just a misunderstanding, just a miscommunication that I interpreted wrong. And she realized later on she did not communicate correctly with me. And the truth, and what's even funny is that student was long gone by the time we finally got back to where that student had been gone almost 3 years. And the truth is they were a good student. It wasn't like, oh, this is a slacking off student that doesn't want anything. And you just screwed up and didn't get this test to them in time. It was just like, it was bad. And that's what kind of got us going, because the truth is I left them. And I was like, no, you're the expert on that. You're the English teacher, that reading literacy. I do not intrude on that. I'm like, but I could do this. We could use this program, and they could actually make you want them to make a presentation tech wise on the report of this. You got Google Slides and you're not using it. Why are you not doing X, Y? And then I had 3 of those students like, oh yeah, I have Dr. Reed's class. I can show you. There was the example. And I think that's what slowly got us on the same page finally. And then I partnered them with one of our marketing engaged readings with Steam Reads for our library at my old school. And wow, I think that was like the biggest thing. And then we did a fundraiser for the marketing where they got the most money, went to the club she advised, and she was shocked. She's like, I got an extra $300. I've been trying to beg for, even though they were one of the well-known funded clubs and their fundraisers went, but we had a couple issues, but that was over more technical. And I mean, the superintendent walked off, but he's like, yeah, next time you guys do that, don't do that. He's like, say no. But you made these people mad, and we understand why you made it mad, but it's not like these clubs haven't done it too. You just rocked the boat a little too much. And he was like, just don't do that again. I think we'll be fine. And after that, we were like, we were good talking about things. Like I'd stop in her room and I'd be like, hey, what's going on, Julie? Oh, Ryan, what's up? And I think my assistant principal walked by and went, wait, who are these two people?
That's great.
They're talking. Wait a second. Oh man. Anyhow, and speaking of that too, I did like this. This is where I was kind of up before it, but I like on right here, and it's on page 52 for those who have the book, is the Wheel of Life. I like how this is actually separating. You have this by categories, which is one of my tabs right there over on thing. But I like how you did it where it's like the Wheel of Life, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's say it's the pizza slice. It's 8 equal slices. Career and work, finances, health and fitness, family and friends, partner and love, personal growth, fun and recreation, and finally spirituality, which I think was a nice one. So how do those, I mean, you don't have to, and I don't want to give anything in the book because I think you break it up pretty good in each of those categories, as well as talking about one that's not talked about hugely, which is the 9th one, which is your physical environment, which some people just are limited or have too much of it. And like, well, where do I fill the space of? So I think that's very interesting. The 9th is a physical space. So how does this Wheel of Life kind of work into us for career and for a personal? And then how does the physical space kind of like just pull them all together?
Yeah, well, this is a technique that I've used in my own life where we kind of have these pieces of the pie that are like the important categories of our life, right? So in order to be the best version of me, I need to make sure my finances are in order, my health and fitness, I'm giving good time to family and friends because that's social connections. That's a real big piece of well-being. And so we kind of evaluate these 8 areas of our life, and I have them score on a scale of 1 to 10 of how do you feel you're doing in those categories? And the bottom line is, it's not that we're supposed to be knocking it out of the ballpark on all of it. That's impossible, right? But like, first we have to start with an evaluation and awareness. Am I, for example, the fun and recreation piece of the pie has been something that I keep kind of letting slide, like I'm working all the time and my career is really important. Our son is flown the coop, so he's out of the nest. So my parenting is important, but it's not requiring a ton of me right now. I'm pretty good and dedicated to my marriage. Scott and I, of course, being empty nesters, we've had a lot more time to spend together. But like that fun and recreation piece is a part that really kind of slides. And that's a part that's important to me. I think that that's actually something that would boost my happiness if I would spend a little bit more time in that category. And so what we want to do is we want to evaluate where we are. And then we want to look at like the 3 areas that we say, you know what, those 3, I want that score to be a little bit higher. I think it needs to be higher because I think I'm going to be more fulfilled. I'm going to be happier in life if I put some direct intention towards that piece of the pie. And so that's what I really did in the last year. And I have to tell you, Ryan, here's what I did. I learned to play pickleball.
Yes, and it's funny because we bring this all the time here, and we have a community house, and they're gonna have a pickleball court. And I'm like, oh, now we can actually play pickleball. My wife and I and our son.
Yeah, and so pickleball gets me 2 of those 8 categories because it gets me time with friends and family, and it hits my fun and recreation. And so my husband and I will play a couple days a week, maybe 90 minutes. And I tell Scott, if you had a monitor showing how many times we laughed and smiled during that 90 minutes. Like even when we're getting ready to go down there after a day of work, we're like, oh, I don't really feel like doing this. And then we come home and we're chitter chattering and we're laughing and we're having fun. And so what that wheel of life does is it says, let's evaluate your life. And then let's pick a couple of categories that you need to bump up a little bit that are going to bring you a lot more fulfillment, a lot more enjoyment in your life. And then how can we kind of back that out and really realign your energy just a little bit? You always have to just tip the scales by just a tiny percent, Ryan, and it causes this ripple effect. So it's not like, again, I'm not asking you to bite off this giant chunk of the pie and just go all in. That's the other thing that people mistake is we only have to move the needle by 1% in our life. And when we move the needle by 1%, it acts like combined interest. And a year from now, you'll be amazed at how you've been able to shift those areas of your life when you put intentional and direct energy towards them.
Yeah. And I think it's a really good point you mentioned about that 1% or those small steps and everything. Some people, they need to go like me. Health-wise, I've had to deal with cholesterol for a thing. When COVID happened, luckily Jen Burtis and I all got together and we made a different thing, which she's turned into her online business. Unfortunately, the last few months after she got remarried and moved back to Pennsylvania, we lost that workout time, but it's been easy for Melissa and I to get back into a workout that Jen taught us. Also find videos that are very similar to it. Like yesterday I had done a walk with the dog and then it was home and she's like, well, I want to go take the dog for a walk with Tyler, and took her out again. I said, I know what, I'm going to do boxing. So I got my boxing gloves on. I reset the thing. I got the music and I got a good, 35 by myself. And it's like, well, see, I had my walk. I had this, I got my Apple Watch, but it's like, well, that's good. I'm keeping that going. I actually felt a sweat. So it's like, see, not that I don't, I love Jen's stuff right now. And and hopefully we'll get back together a thing, but at least I was able to move enough of that percentage to where, I don't have her, but I know what to do. I know where to get into that area too. And I think that was one thing that was really good about your physical. And the truth is, I have a 2-story house, but if you look at my house, there's some areas like, well, you got a lot of space here. Like, well, you've got everything crammed over here. It's like boxing set, which I got for my wife's birthday in November. It's over in the corner in the family room, the little area thing. And it's kind of attached to a floor thing, which then has in the kitchen. So it's like, I'm doing my stuff and everything and hitting everything. But at the same time, people are like, you're kind of in a small space versus if you were in the basement. Like, well, if you go to my basement, you'll see how I have my work area, the green screen for my comic reviews. And here's my whole shelves, which, this will be on as well. And people are like, wow, you don't have as much space. Like, yeah, but then I reorganize and I guess you have used the physical space. But, when Melissa and I do our things together with the family, and that deals with a partner, that helps with the recreation and fun. Like when I do
it does. Yeah. It's called stacking, right? Like when we can stack in our life, then we get an even, we yield way bigger dividends.
Yeah, even here, me doing this and you being the first person with the Canva pieces is the personal growth. This is where I wanted to go with these streams. And now it's like, oh, look, it's like, because I said himself, I don't do the blog anymore. I don't do this on me. My social medias are specific to certain ones between what is professional, what is professional, what's just straight personal. But I've got enough of the focus where I'm doing more of the growth where I can do this. And, when I do your book review in the next episode, and audio listeners will hear that next one, is I'm going to have it set up a little bit different. It's not quite George Corse's like epic book report, clear the air horn, stuff like that. But it still works onto the little piece where he's laughing right now at me. But at the same time, it is a good person with just for career and for areas as well, too. And it definitely helped me in my current school district when I took back over the media section and we expanded to the video and everything. And then the media director took over there. But that was professional and career growth that did.
I love that. Yes, I love that.
The small steps make it. I learned years ago during my internship saying like, Ryan, don't go 0 to 60. But you're a big picture guy. And I love the fact you're a big picture guy. I was like, well, then I'd backwards design. They're like, oh, you're already ahead of the game. It's like, this is where we should be. How do we get there?
Yes. Yes, I get that.
Oh man. So anyhow, Kim, you've got so much coming up here, and I like to give it because you have a lot of events coming up here and everything. And for our listeners and the time we have here too, is like, where are you going to be? Because you're going to be in a little bit. Luckily, we were able to squeeze this in here for the podcast. But where are you going to be? You've got quite the schedule going on up here, and I got her website here, and it'll be on the show notes too. But where are you going to be here the next couple of weeks?
On Thursday, I fly to Sun Valley, Idaho, and some keynoting a conference out there. I'm really excited to do that. And then one of my gals that works for me, she's actually doing 3 sessions on culture and climate. So I love that the two of us are going to get to go on that road trip together. Well, not a road trip, a plane trip. And then, yeah, so,
It's
you
air
know,
travel.
I prefer air travel very, very much, Ryan. Yes.
Yeah, I know. This is like, 'cause I'm trying to share that for your website. There we go. It's like, let's go.
Yeah,
There are
yeah.
notes in her workshop. There it is, right there. There we go. Bing. Bam.
Yeah, but like, I'm in Naples, Florida, Waco, Texas, Dunlin, Indiana, up by Chicago, lots of different New York. Oh, I'm so excited about that one. Because I'm speaking at Fordham University, which is
I
this most
want to go to
beautiful,
New
beautiful
York.
campus. Yeah. And so I'm very excited. I love to get out there and do the speaking. It can be a little bit slower in the wintertime, and I really miss it. It just completely lights me up and fuels me. It's like when my husband said the other day, what's the one thing you would never give up? And I said, the keynotes. Like, that is the number one thing that if I had to give everything else up and I had to choose just one thing, I would do those, because it's just so fun to connect with people and really to, give them these little tiny things that really not only inspire them, but do create those shifts in their life.
Yeah, and I mean, you're amazing in it. I mean, what I've seen from you in your career here before, we met here. I mean, following it's like, boy, I'd love to go to her session, or I'd like to hear a little bit more. Like, she's on this podcast. I'm going to listen to Kim. I like hearing this on this one today. So it's really good. I mean, you have that one thing. You're definitely inspirational. I mean, that's another reason too, because as people know, I had to cut back on books for various reasons right now. But I was like, hers came out, and I got a $50 Amazon card. Like, I know what I'm spending this card on. Granted, there'll be a couple trade paperbacks, so like Immortal Thor in that into, but Kim's at the top of the list. Like, it will arrive on Tuesday. I'm like, all right.
I know. It's so funny. So we hit the #1 bestseller on Amazon over the weekend, and I had people panicked. They were messaging me, Ryan, because their book was taking more than 2 days, and they thought that we ran out of books. I'm like, I don't think the Amazon printer has blown up or anything.
Because then that's when you move to New York's best-selling,
Yeah, that would be a giant leap, but it's on the vision board.
My vision board. I mean, it's over here at the. Actually, let me grab it here. Speaking of which, on Canva, so that's where mine is. Actually, I'll show this. I'll switch here so Kim can see it a little bit closer on the camera. So there you go. There it is.
I love that you have a vision board. Mine's over here.
I kind of have to. Oh yes. Wow. Look at that.
Look at that.
She's cut out for magazines. I did Canva because me, the digital teacher. I do perler beads and crafts and everything. But
love it. I love that I met a man who has a vision board. Yay!
Notice the gardening, which everybody knows I'm a big gardening guy there, and then my little Mediterranean things, and I got the balance, and of course my one word, which is warrior, which I've been making a lot of things. And I was watching Kylo, he's a video photographer. He does classic video games. He was just doing Final Fantasy 2, out, which I was like, oh my God, am I that old? But at the same time, his videos were almost he had to do 4 parts. Each one of those videos is 4 hours. That's 16 hours. And keep in mind, he has his own business. He has a dog. He doesn't have any kids, but his wife does it work too. But he has such a commitment that and his actual job to do this. It's amazing. But somebody the other day said, oh yeah, I did a vision board. And I said, oh, on what games you cannot beat? And he's like, I saw what you did there. So he made a vision board where his next list of very hard ones, which he did beat back in the day. So it's kind of funny though. But yeah, I think I'm one of the few guys that actually has
love it. I love it.
Where's the one over? No, not that one. I'm doing lacking because my journaling, and I haven't. I mean, you talk about journal, I do the things. I don't journal as much as I do. I mean, when I'm in the mood, it's like I want to journal, I'm going to do it. Mine are not as frequent versus like I want to do one every single day. I'm like, I hate you.
Yeah, I can only do the gratitude journal, which is where I write down 5 things every day. But I do want to get into just journaling once a week about like a page about my week, and I just can't make it happen either. I want to and I need to, but it's like, it feels like one more thing now I'm supposed to do. But I know it would be a treasure.
My only thing that people know this, because I'm notorious of this too, is also is like me is my, day in my life in pixels. And that is, pretty much daily, which I've been really good. Do I get a couple?
That's really cool. Wait a minute. I want to see that. Wow.
So those who know this and those who do not, so the year, this is actually not new, and people know this is the Pixel Classroom. You're the Pixel 3D art crazy. I hate you that you make gigantic perler beads and somehow get the kids to do this and somehow don't, have it on the raids and everything. I said, oh, they're much worse people than me. And there's people that do this for a business. Like they will do things that are bigger. There's this woman in Chile, true story. She's only 5'3". She's made 6-foot, like giant sized Dragon Ball Z characters, Disney, everything. She does videos on it. That's all she does. And then she sells them. I mean, she gets them packed up and sells them and everything else. But anyhow, the back to our original thing, which is the year in pixels. So you mark out your year, and of course this is leap year, so there's 29. So you mark in little boxes like the pixels. As pixels are the universal picture. That's how NASA gets the pictures. They bring all the pictures together, and you pick your main emotions. Now it depends on it. Like one thing I said is I'm going to try to remove. Met days from it. So I color go. So if you're happy, sunshine. Do happy. Successful day, I thought it'd be kind of cool to do pink for one. So there's pink. Sad day just means, it's sad. Maybe there was a death in the family. Maybe it's just bad news in the world. Or just like, I'm feeling that way. It's raining. I'm depressed. So I did blue. A normal day, because I use so much with purple, even though purple is the epilepsy color we do for the ribs and stuff. I did that as a normal day for me as well. But lazy day, like yellow, like orange, like, yeah, I'm a little bit of avarice, just kind of sitting back there, sick, green. Love, I did red. And some people like, why are you doing love? Does that mean you and your wife are doing what? I'm like, no, it just means it's a very loving day. Maybe it was a great day with the family. Maybe something happened. Maybe, like I did Easter. I was an example. And then I said, I did do bad. I just got rid of red and made that love. And I made bad brown, which made more sex because that's exactly how you feel. So I do this. And then 6 months, I do share it. But I always calculate on a Google spreadsheet, like all the numbers. So I say, I put in like how much it is, I have it total, and it tells me as they say, there's not every day is good, but there's good in every day. So this really shows like, what, despite everything, you truly only that you officially admit to, you had like 12 bad days out of 356 days.
Yeah,
and normal days were normal days. But it's easy just to pick the color, set it up, and you have your color key, and you do it by year, and you just do each one because it doesn't take you more than 2 minutes. Now, granted, I have days where it's like, oh, I forgot to do my pixel, but I'm like, hey, it is one time and believe it or not, it was actually the beginning of this month. I didn't do the first 4 days, but I'm like, well, they were all. I looked back and like, they were really all kind of normal days. Nothing wow happened. Nothing was like, nothing like, oh crap, or oh, I was lazy. So I just like, nope, 4 purple. Moved on. Next day was lazy. Then I had a very successful day, which was on a Sunday, and I had a normal day. And then, believe it or not, today, which I just marked, was a happy day. Things went very well. What just happened before we recorded with all the tech thing? It was a happy day. So I can say it's a happy day. And I'm talking to you. There we go. And now Kim's gonna be like, let's talk about the pixel year. And for me, for my wellness, I'm like, I'm getting a reference. Fox is laughing at me. Oh man.
Now, Ryan, did you find me through Dave Burgess? Is that how you found me?
Yes. As George is saying, I don't know anybody who has as many education or you with Dave Burgess. And it's like, you've seen him. He's like, I'm not just stuck on Dave, but the biggest reason why is I read Teach Like a Pirate in 2014. I was second year in my technology facilitator. I still didn't have my full teacher certificate, but I was just to the point to where it felt like the teachers didn't want to do anything. Nobody else wanted to do anything. I'm like, why am I even doing this job? Why do I want to finish my doctorate? And I read Teach Like a Pirate. I got it by Barbara Grenberg. And she said, read it. If that doesn't change a thing. And since then, I just kind of stuck with it. Back when you maybe would get a DBC book or IM Press book, maybe every 4 or 5 months. Now it's like, well, every month there's no thing. I mean, granted, I can only afford so many, and I still got 3 books, which are admin. Like, you want to read 10 things about being principal? Well, I'm like, I would just like to read it. Otherwise, I've read instructional books. I've read the Hack Learning. I've done everything else. So I got a bookshelf, and I've shared this on my Instagram. You can go look at my Instagram here, Kim, and you'll see my bookshelf, and you will see everything from top to bottom. And I even joke like, still room for more.
Yes. So my bookshelf is color coordinated. I don't know if you can tell that or not, but I have a color.
Oh, it is. I'm about to say you have a color. I have mine by publisher or by thing. Like if it's like very everything or like DBC or I think thing, but it's like if it's very instructional or
I kind of like the content. Yeah.
If it's like it's the big as I call them the magazine books. Like, hey, scan this, or here's visual examples like Alt Achieve or Alice Keeler's book. It's like these are the watch it, look it, and go books and everything versus like, no, these are just very like autobiography books. So, grab those books. Call me Mr. D.
Our brains all work differently.
Those are autobiography. I got to get those people on here. Anyhow. There's my season 6 goals, Kim. That's what we're getting for episode 200.
Okay.
I've only been trying to get, everybody from Mark Hamill to Mr. D on here for the last.
Yes, Mr. D.
I'd love to get him for episode 200 next year.
He's amazing.
Next season. I actually did talk to him briefly. I think that'd be a good way to wrap up number 10. Believe it or not, this is a true story. I almost had one of the former secretaries of education on here in season 2. I'm not going to say who because they might come back like, well, I don't know if I agreed to but I almost had him in season 2 and I would have been like, well, that would have been
That
absolutely.
is, yeah.
It just fell apart. It sadly fell apart, but
That's great.
well, you think it's bad with our schedules? Try being a government
Exactly.
worker. It's worse. My father-in-law worked for the government for 30 years, so yeah.
Yeah.
But anyhow, on that note, so Kim, it's been an amazing thing. Besides going to your website, how else can they connect to you? And I've got your like little social medias here, and my nice little card here, and it's color coded and icon coded. That's how good I'm doing.
Yes. Yeah. They can go to Kim Strobel Joy on Instagram or strobeleducation.com or just Kim Strobel on LinkedIn.
Yep, and then we can do that and so forth. And then coming down the road and everything. What's next? What's next for Kim Strobel? What's going on next past the conferences here? You think?
Oh my goodness! So
I'm more of your books anyhow.
Yeah, you know what? I'm diving back into our online courses, Ryan. So
there you go.
just constantly learning and improving things, and so I took another course on something that I'm very passionate about. Now I want to go back in and tweak some things. And so that's my next, I feel like it's a college homework project. I told my husband, I feel like I'm in college and I'm like, I got 6 weeks to get this done. And that causes me all kinds of anxiety, but I've been plugging away on it. So that, and then just getting ready for my travel schedule. And then my husband and I have, thankfully, a vacation planned at the end of May that is so good. So
yeah, there we go. There it is. And that's the air horn right there. Yeah, you're on vacation. And also another thing, a round of applause. There you go. There you go. I'm giving her. I'm gonna inflate her ego with what she'll probably be hearing at the conferences here.
I love it. Thank you, Ryan.
Well, Kim, thank you so much for being on the Pixel Classroom here and talking and everything. All our audio and visual learns on the stream one. Thank you for so much on here. Like I said, check out her Kim's website and everything. It'll be here in the show notes in the main area. And on that note, everybody, we will see everyone later. Now watch this, Kim.